Dolly Parton is saying goodbye to the love of her life. The legendary country singer announced on social media that her husband of 58 years, Carl Dean, died March 3rd in Nashville, Tennessee.
Dolly Parton has long been recognized as one of the most dazzling figures in the music world, a shimmering icon whose voice and style became synonymous with modern country. She's the radiant presence people think of whenever someone strums a guitar in Nashville. Yet behind every captivating star stands a story that's rarely told, and in Dolly's case, that hidden chapter wore the name Carl Dean. For nearly 6 decades, the public barely caught a glimpse of him. Cameras never seemed to capture his face. Reporters rarely asked about him, and Dolly herself kept that side of her life locked behind the bright lights. When people did speak of Carl, they imagined a simple Southern gentleman, quietly content as Dolly soared to global fame. But as time went by, curiosity grew, until Dolly made an announcement that left fans reeling.
She's one of the best-selling artists of all time, yet Dolly Parton managed to keep her longtime marriage with Carl Dean out of the public limelight.
It wasn't simply the fact that Carl existed. Everyone knew that on paper. The real question was, who is he, and why did he vanish from the public eye for so many years? For a man married to one of the most recognizable women on the planet, Carl Dean lived as a near myth, a ghost in Dolly's biography. Word had it he was shy, uninterested in show business, and determined to avoid the chaos that surrounded Dolly's rising career. But was that the full truth, or did Dolly's beloved husband harbor secrets that even the tabloids couldn't unearth? When Dolly finally addressed the rumors that had swirled for decades, she did so quietly, peeling back just enough of the mystery to confirm that Carl Dean was not the storybook figure everyone believed.
Dolly Parton, the country music icon, just made her first public appearance since her husband Carl Dean passed away March 3rd, thanking fans for their support as she mourns her partner of almost 60 years.
At that moment, the walls around Dolly's carefully guarded marriage began to crumble. Speculation ran rampant. Had Dolly kept a major secret from her fans all this time? What if the legendary love story wasn't as flawless as people assumed? Perhaps Carl Dean wasn't merely hiding from fame. Maybe he was running from something else entirely. This revelation shook Dolly's admirers to their core, calling into question the love they'd placed on a pedestal for so many years. But that's only the beginning, because once that veil was lifted, the story lurking behind it was more astonishing and more heartbreaking than anyone could have guessed. In 1964, an 18-year-old Dolly Parton arrived in Nashville with a dream in her heart and a suitcase full of ambitious songs.
Now we're going to turn to Dolly Parton.
We're thinking of her, and we're going to look back on a wonderful, wonderful love story. Dolly Parton's husband.
She roamed the music row, auditioning and writing, believing she'd one day see her name in lights. Then fate stepped in at a most unlikely setting, the wishy-washy Laundromat. It was there, standing outside amid the hum of machines, that Dolly encountered Carl Dean, a 21-year-old man who would soon claim that day changed his life forever. He wasn't the outgoing charmer you'd expect to sweep Dolly Parton off her feet. Instead, he was reserved, even shy, speaking to Dolly with the softness of a man who noticed something special in her beyond the glitter. Some would say Dolly fell just as fast, but in truth, she took her time. Being new in town, she was wary of trusting a stranger, no matter how kind his eyes appeared.
The country music community will always love Dolly Parton. The Jolene singers received not one, but 2 touching tributes during NBC and Peacock's Opry 100 celebration.
Carl persisted gently, and soon he was meeting her on her aunt's porch rather than escorting her to fancy restaurants. That porch became their silent courtship ground. After a week of these subdued encounters, Dolly agreed to go out privately with Carl, realizing that behind his quiet exterior was a loyal, stable presence. Exactly what she needed in a world that could swallow young dreamers whole. There was no flashy proposal or elaborate engagement party. By 1966, they'd married in a small ceremony that nearly no one remembered. Dolly's career was just starting its ascent, and she likely had no idea how large her fame would one day become.
I really believe that was one of God's greatest gifts to give me, Carl Dean. We're best buds, and so we're just really very compatible.
As Dolly pushed forward, recording, touring, and building a name, Carl embraced a contrasting path. He owned a road-paving business, a job about as distant from the glitz of the Grand Ole Opry as one could imagine. He seemed content with everyday life, uninterested in red carpets or televised award shows. For a time, this separation of worlds felt manageable, but that separation was already planting seeds of curiosity. People wondered, why does Dolly's husband never appear by her side at these glamorous events? Was he simply the supportive spouse who'd rather stay home, or was something deeper afoot? Dolly's own comments painted a picture of a man who preferred local radio stations to her top-charting hits.
On Monday, the country artist announced on Instagram that her beloved husband of nearly 60 years had passed away at the age of 82.
She joked that he wasn't her biggest fan and that he found her showbiz circle puzzling. Perhaps it was that difference in personalities that made them click. Or maybe it was the first sign of the great distance that would define their marriage for decades' carpets or televised award show. For a time, this separation of worlds felt manageable. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, Dolly Parton was well on her way to becoming a household name. Her appearances on the Porter Wagoner show skyrocketed her visibility, and her hits resonated not just with country fans, but with mainstream audiences. The flamboyant outfits, the magnetic stage presence, and that voice, she was unstoppable. Carl, on the other hand, seemed to slip further into the shadow.
She wrote, "Carl and I spent many wonderful years together. Words can't do justice to the love we shared for over 60 years.
He wasn't at the concerts, never posed for interviews, and rarely joined Dolly on any public outing. That might sound like the behavior of a man who hates fame, but some whispered that Carl disapproved of Dolly's career altogether, that as she expanded her brand, he felt their simple dreams slipping away. Dolly's life turned into a blur of touring schedules, promotional interviews, and endless songwriting. She signed major record deals and rubbed elbows with industry giants. All the while, Carl lived what looked like a completely separate existence in Nashville. He didn't attend the Grammys or even smaller award nights. The one time Dolly convinced him to tag along, he left that event muttering that he never wanted to go again, calling it a circuit.
Several weeks after the 79-year-old mourned the death of her husband of 58 years, Carl Dean. The star-studded night of musical celebrations in honor of the Grand Ole Opry's milestone 100th anniversary.
Dolly, out of respect and love, never forced him to be part of the publicity. Yet for outsiders, it raised the question, can a marriage truly thrive with one person under constant spotlights and the other hiding from them? Then came the subject of children, and with it, the heartbreak that would bond and break them in equal measure. Dolly always pictured having a brood of kids. Carl also expressed a desire to be a father, imagining a tranquil life where Dolly's music might bring them comfort at home, not tens of thousands in a stadium. They tried to keep the possibility alive, holding on to that hope long after Dolly's star status soared. But fate had other plans.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank all of you for all the flowers and the cards.
That dream slowly receded when Dolly discovered health issues that would shape the rest of her life. The 1980s were a defining era for Dolly Parton. She conquered both country and pop charts, starred in movies like 9 to 5, and became a global cultural force. Yet behind the glitter of sold-out tours and hit songs, her personal life took a devastating turn. Dolly was diagnosed with endometriosis, a condition that brought severe pain and complications. After countless treatments, she faced the grim reality that she might never have children. Ultimately, she underwent a hysterectomy, extinguishing any last spark of hope that she and Carl would raise a child of their own. For a woman known to the public as a beacon of optimism and light, this was a crushing blow. Dolly spiraled into a deep depression. In interviews much later, she admitted those were some of her darkest moments, revealing she once hovered on the brink of truly giving up. Carl, for his part, remained physically present but emotionally opaque. He wasn't the type to shower Dolly with dramatic pep talks or whisk her away on a grand retreat to cheer her up. Instead, he stayed in the background, believing Dolly needed to work through her grief on her own. But did she resent him for this hands-off approach? It's difficult to say. She rarely shared details of that heartbreak, leaving fans to imagine how a marriage might survive such a storm. In the aftermath, Dolly found solace in music and charity. Her Imagination Library, a program that sends books to children, became her way of mothering the world. She poured her love into countless kids she'd never met, forming a spiritual family that, in some ways, replaced the one she'd never have. Carl, again, steered clear of the spotlight surrounding Dolly's philanthropic endeavors. It was as if his distance grew in tandem with her fame, fueling the persistent question. If Carl was proud of Dolly, why hide so completely? For many couples, adversity can bring them closer. But for Dolly and Carl, it often seemed like each test, each new tragedy, only reinforced the distance. Still, they pressed on. They vacationed in RVs around the country, hunting for quiet campgrounds far from paparazzi. Dolly would mention how these low-key escapes kept them connected. Yet rumor mills insisted that the cracks in their relationship were widening, that a man so thoroughly removed from Dolly's world must be harboring deeper frustration or secrets. In their later years, Dolly hinted that Carl was not in the best health, but never offered specifics. Observers who spotted him, if at all, noted that he walked more slowly, that his eyes lacked the alertness of younger days. Dolly continued recording and performing.
And the well wishes for the loss of Carl, You know how I loved him, and he would want me to be working.
Though some fans noticed she scaled back the magnitude of her tours, whispers began to circulate that Carl was battling a neurodegenerative illness, possibly Alzheimer's, but Dolly's official statements remained tight-lipped. She often reminded interviewers that Carl valued privacy above all else, and she intended to honor that. It was during this period that Dolly took on fewer long-term projects, quietly stepping away from potential film roles and high-pressure show schedules. Close friends said she was devoting more time to Carl, helping him remember their life together, reading him passages of old books, or telling him stories about how they first fell in love. For a couple who had always lived in two separate worlds, this might have been the first time Dolly actually slowed down to dwell in Carl's small, private space. Yet as the months crept by, those same friends described heart-wrenching scenarios. Some claimed Carl would look at Dolly without recognition, as if seeing a stranger. Others said Dolly would leave the room in tears, unable to bear watching the man who once anchored her reality slip into confusion. The lonely irony was painful. After a lifetime of refusing to stand in Dolly's spotlight, Carl now couldn't even recall those years with. He had, in a sense, retreated into an even more hidden realm, his own fading mind. Even so, Dolly never wavered publicly. She still flashed that iconic smile in TV appearances, spoke of upcoming projects, and never once exploited Carl's condition for sympathy. For decades, she had protected him from the media, and nothing would change that. But in a household that once found equilibrium in Dolly's outgoing brilliance and Carl's quiet strength, the loss of Carl's memory was nothing short of devastating. On March 3rd, Dolly Parton released a brief statement. Carl Dean had passed. It wasn't a press conference or an emotional televised tribute. She simply let the world know in a short note, thanking people for their concern and asking for privacy. The entertainment industry, always quick to rally around a star's tragedy, paused in confusion. Many had never even met Carl, nor had they known he was near the end of his life. Was there going to be a funeral for an icon's husband? Were tributes from Dolly's famous friends on the way? None of that transpired. Instead, there was near silence. No grand memorial. No tears broadcast for the world. It seemed Carl departed in the exact same manner he had lived, quietly, with no desire for spectacle. While some fans respected this, others demanded more. They wanted Dolly to share stories, to post old photos.
Carl Dean, who supported the country music star in life, love, and her career, passing away at 82.
To give them a final glimpse of the mysterious man behind the legend. But Dolly remained resolute. This was her heartbreak, not a public performance. She provided no elaborate details about his final days, and rumors quickly filled the vacuum. Some said Carl died alone while Dolly was in the middle of a business meeting. Others insisted she was right there, holding his hand in his last moment. No one outside Dolly's circle truly knew the truth. What was certain was that Dolly Parton, the woman who had enthralled millions with her songs and spirit, now carried the weight of a private sorrow. In the eyes of many fans, she'd lost her anchor, the man who had loved her before anyone else saw the star in her eyes. Yet people wondered, was their love truly unwavering, or had Carl's increasing isolation been a sign of an unspoken rift? Had Dolly's unstoppable ambition left him behind decades before he officially passed? Without the spectacle of a funeral or the closure of a eulogy, the heartbreak felt incomplete, still shrouded in uncertainty. In the wake of Carl Dean's passing, the rumor mill reignited. Some alleged that Carl maintained a double life for years, a hidden relationship, or perhaps a history of legal troubles that Dolly diligently concealed. Others supposed that he was controlling behind closed doors, resenting Dolly's fame while relying on her fortune. There were even whispers he struggled with an addiction, though no solid evidence emerged to support these claims. Absent any official statements, people pieced together scraps of speculation to form myriad theories. One recurring story was that Carl, resentful of the spotlight's glare, had effectively forbidden Dolly from sharing too much about him. It was the ultimate vow of secrecy, ensuring he would never have to endure paparazzi or label executives intruding upon his life. Dolly, fiercely loyal, may have agreed, preserving his anonymity for as long as they both lived. Another theory posited Carl's health issues stretched back far longer than anyone suspected, and Dolly's touring schedule often left him alone when he needed her most. Could Carl's bitterness have grown from years of feeling overshadowed by Dolly's star power? Did he quietly blame her for focusing on a global audience at the expense of a family that never was? Dolly herself never confirmed nor denied the swirling talk, continuing to shield the details of Carl's life just as he wanted. This refusal to address rumors head-on only added fuel to the fire. Had Dolly chosen love over transparency, possibly at great personal cost? She once said in a rare moment of candor that Carl taught her what loyalty really meant. But loyalty can also be confining if it means burying truths that deserve to see daylight. Perhaps Dolly sensed that once you let the media feast on one secret, they'll keep clawing for more. As public fascination with Dolly reached fever pitch over the decades,
We have the greatest relationship because, first of all, we're best friends.
Dolly sharing the news on Instagram revealing he died on Monday in Nashville.
Carl Dean somehow became a symbol. To some, he represented the pure, unwavering love that transcended the pitfalls of fame. To others, he was an ominous figure, overshadowing Dolly's success with a quiet refusal to stand beside her. In truth, love is rarely so straightforward. Even Dolly's most romantic songs carry a hint of sadness, a trace of longing for things that never quite came to pass. Many have noted the presence of heartbreak in Dolly's music, and they wonder if those lyrics were coded messages about Carl. She wrote about lonely nights and uncertain tomorrows, as though describing a partner who never joined her in the spotlight. Of course, Dolly often insisted she drew inspiration from many sources: friends, family, even pure imagination. But one can't help but read between the lines, especially when you realize Dolly spent more time on buses and planes than she did in her Nashville home. Carl Dean, in the glimpses people managed to catch, was no monster. He was described by those who met him as polite, soft-spoken, and protective of Dolly. Some close family members called him the perfect man for someone as ambitious as Dolly, a grounding force. Yet that perfect match came with its own cost. An entire half-century of Dolly's life that she rarely shared, even with fans who felt they knew her every quirk. Privacy is a treasure, and Dolly guarded Carl's with a fierce loyalty that only deepened when he fell ill. The fact that hardly anyone saw Carl and Dolly together fed the notion of a marriage lived in parallel, not partnership. But Dolly never renounced him or hinted that she felt unloved. She insisted he made her laugh, that he teased her for wearing too much makeup, and that they kept each other's spirits young. If that's true, maybe love doesn't always look how we expect. Maybe it's not about standing side by side on red carpets or plastering your partner's face across social media. Maybe it's about the hidden moments that belong to just two people. Among all the possible tragedies that can befall a marriage, the slow fade of memory may be the cruelest. For years, Dolly had juggled the demands of performing and running various business ventures. She was unstoppable, cranking out hits and always uplifting others. But as Carl's condition deteriorated, she realized no stage or spotlight could mend a broken mind. She scaled down her public appearances.
And while she didn't disclose his cause of death, she wrote in part, "Carl and I spent many wonderful years together,"
quietly retreating to their Nashville home, hoping to salvage whatever precious time remained. Even then, Dolly's role as an entertainer pulled her in different direction. Concerts were scheduled, talk shows booked, deals signed. She had commitments to fans worldwide, and backing out of them all would be like dismantling her entire legacy. So Dolly did what she could, cutting down tours, trimming travel, being more selective with interviews. Friends say it was never enough. They'd hear Dolly sob late at night, worried that when she walked through the door, Carl might not recognize her face. She tried playing him recordings of her older music, hoping to jog his memory, reminding him of the times he'd teased her, or the day he first saw her at that laundromat. Some days it worked. Other days, it left Dolly feeling more isolated than ever. The heartbreak of loving someone who no longer grasps that love is a profound kind of sorrow. It's made all the more difficult by the knowledge that the clock is ticking. Dolly perhaps clung to the hope that on good days, he still remembered how she laughed or the sound of her voice in the morning. But as the illness advanced, those good days became fewer and farther apart. Any regrets Dolly harbored about the tours, the missed moments, the children they never had, must have weighed heavily on her. It's impossible to say if Carl had regrets of his own, for by then, words often failed him. Carl Dean left this world much like he occupied it, without spectacle or ceremony. Dolly's simple announcement marked the final chapter of their marriage for the public, but for Dolly, it signaled a new and lonely road. She now stands as a woman whose legacy looms large, but whose private life has been woven with loss and longing. Even in interviews after his passing, she hasn't revealed much, sticking to short acknowledgments that Carl was at peace and that she would forever treasure his memory. Whether she was beside him in his final moments or on the other side of the city is something she may never share. For fans, the story ends with as many mysteries as it began. Did Carl Dean harbor secrets that Dolly safeguarded all these years? Or was he simply an ordinary man who disliked fame, content to let Dolly's star burn bright while he remained behind the scenes? Perhaps the truth is somewhere in the middle, a private soul who truly loved Dolly and wanted no part of the hype, but who also wrestled with feelings of abandonment and regret. We may never know the full reality behind their closed doors. What remains beyond the questions is a testament to endurance. Nearly 60 years of marriage in a business that devours relationships. The heartbreak of never having children, the strain of fame, the hush of a final goodbye. Somehow they stayed together. Maybe that's the real story. Two people bound by a love that defied the usual rules of celebrity romance. Dolly Parton's fans might yearn for the fairy tale, but real life is always more complicated. In the end, Dolly lost the man who was there before the glitz, who met her when the world had yet to kneel at her feet. She lost someone who knew her not as a country legend, but as the teenage dreamer he found outside a laundromat. That's a heartbreak no spotlight can soften. And though she may keep the final chapters locked within her own heart, Dolly has always had a way of writing truths into her song. Someday, perhaps, a new tune will surface, a ballad that quietly honors a love lived far from the public eye. Until then, we can only wonder at the delicate balance of a life so bright and a man so hidden, bound together by threads of devotion neither of them ever fully explained to the rest of us. And maybe that's how it was always meant to be.